Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Renee Wolgan, and after almost 20 years practicing public accounting, I joined Telemus this past January to help launch our virtual family CFO services. By offering services such as bill pay, account reconciliation and oversight, private investment tracking, and document management, we are able to reduce the administrative burden placed on families when it comes to managing their wealth. More so now than ever during the coronavirus pandemic, we've realized the importance of ensuring there is another knowledgeable point of contact with regards to a family's financial affairs, segregating the handling of personal finances from its business personnel, the ability to access information from anywhere, and mitigating risk. Whether it be a retiree who travels frequently, a corporate executive whose primary focus is their business activities, or a family member who is no longer able to handle these functions on their own, we provide peace of mind that clients' personal financial matters are being tended to, enabling them to spend time pursuing what they're passionate about. One thing we all have in common is that we're all getting older with every single day that passes. And with that comes its share of challenges. To help us navigate through some of those challenges, today I have here with me Henry Gornbein and Laurie Blume, founders of Gracefully Greying, the go-to guide of legal, medical, social, economic, psychological, and lifestyle issues, focusing on those of us who are getting older and have aging parents or loved ones dealing with these issues on a daily basis. Please keep in mind if you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to ask them using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our best to address them throughout the presentation. Henry and Laurie, thank you so much for joining us today. Please start by telling us a little bit about yourselves and what prompted you to start Gracefully Greying.
Renee, thank you so much for having us. I've been an attorney, writer, and videographer for many, many years. I created a show called Practical Law with over 900 shows aired to date. And one morning I woke up and told my wife, I'm not getting any younger. I'd like to start doing something else. And we came up with the title Gracefully Greying. The idea being that the goal really is to age, but do it in a graceful fashion. And one thing I've learned over the years is that for many people, the goal is to retire. For other people, the goal is to perhaps continue working, but everyone has to have a passion. And one thing I learned from my mother, who is now 99 and she'll be 100 in August, is that you need three things to grow old gracefully. Number one, you need a passion. You need something that's important to you. Number two, you need enough money so that you can live comfortably, and everyone has a different definition of what enough money is, and that's where Telemus can come into play very importantly. And number three, you need some type of health. Life is filled with minefields, and we don't know what's going to happen. So those are three things. And with that in mind, started doing videos, interviewing doctors, lawyers, financial planners, housing experts, everything related to the issues that we face as we're getting older or have aging parents. I then met Laurie Blume, who's a graphic designer, and we put our heads together, and in March, we launched a website called Gracefully Greying. So between the two of us, we're doing regular video that are on the Gracefully Greying YouTube channel. And every day we launch new ideas and new blogs and issues on the Gracefully Greying site. And Laurie, why don't you tell us about your background and carry on with regard to some of the newest things that are appearing on Gracefully Greying?
Sure. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you, Renee and Telemus, for having Henry and I in Gracefully Greying. As Henry mentioned, I am a longtime graphic designer and marketer. I have all different kinds of clients that I work with, and this project, more than a project, a platform that Henry and I are building is really, as Henry mentioned, to serve the 50 and over demographic with all kinds of resources and professional discussion, community discussion, whether it's local, national, and hopefully bringing people together, providing advice, consultation, humor, just a lot of content to get out to the people, especially during this kind of difficult time of the COVID-19 era that we are in. So that's who we are.
Great. What have you noticed are the most common challenges of aging for you and your loved ones?
Well, I mean, if I could just say generally, challenges for, again, 50 and older demographic, but probably more so an older crowd, maybe 70, 80s, 90s. Challenges would include socialization, mobilization, your physical changes that happens to everybody, whether they're minor or major, getting your affairs in order, being able to, reach out to family, spend time with family and friends becomes maybe more of an issue as people are separated geographically. And mental health issues. Gracefully Greying covers all of these, and we talk about all of these issues. So really, there are a lot of challenges. I mean, there are a lot of great things about Gracefully Greying too. It's not all negative. So just definitely a lot of challenges that everybody faces from day to day.
In today's society, we are all so vulnerable to IRS scams, identity theft, telemarketers, and other financial predators, including family and friends and caregivers. Now more than ever, it's so easy to be taken advantage of. How do you recommend we keep our loved ones' finances safe while still making them feel that they have that financial independence?
I could say keep your money under the mattress, but that's not the right answer. So it's a situation where there's a reason to have some paranoia, especially in our age where with the push of a button on your computer, you could give someone access to your most personable information, your ID, your social security number, your bank statements. So it's so much easier to access and scam someone today than it might have been 10 or 15 years ago. What's interesting, I personally am a victim of identity theft. And what happened was, this is about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even longer. I get a call from one of my credit cards saying that there are a lot of charges that are appearing in California for watches, big ticket jewelry items. And I said, well, it's not me. And we shut it down. But there was someone out there working. Next thing I learned when I started filing my taxes was that someone else had my social security number and was filing separate tax returns in my name. And every year, I think as recently as last year, my accountant would have to sit on the phone with me while we talked to the IRS to try and clarify things that I'm the real Henry Gornbein, and this is my personal tax return, and accept it. And for years they wouldn't accept them, and it was going through, we had to jump through hoops year after year after year. So having your identities stolen can have repercussions for many, many years. I have had shows on Gracefully Greying with the Supreme Court Justice Megan Kavanaugh and Scott Peter from the Attorney General's office, where they talk about the fact that many of the elderly are preyed upon not only by strangers, but upon family members, but by people who trust. And they are doing kind of a statewide task force that has been launched looking at abuse within the court system here in Michigan. And there have been over the years guardian ad litems and court-appointed attorneys who have taken advantage of their clients. So it's a matter, you have to be careful, you have to be cautious. I've also interviewed on Gracefully Greying specialists in elder law who talked about the many scams and many incidents of abuse, as well as the fact that I've interviewed the chief of police on Gracefully Greying for Bloomfield Township. We talked about the fact there are scams, and his recommendation was don't open a door to a stranger. If someone calls and says they're about to fix a leaky roof, make sure it's someone who's credible. Make sure that there are references, because there are a lot of unethical work people who will go out and take advantage of you. I've also had in my law practice over the years people who have fallen victim to scams. I've had people who have fallen victim to something called the Nigerian love scam, which is where someone purportedly falls in love with another individual, and the other individual convinces that person to start giving money. Sometimes it starts with small events, and then it gets to be larger amounts, and they're scammed because the person they fall in love with doesn't exist. It's someone else playing games. So another thing to be careful of, if you get a call that the IRS wants your tax information or your ID or social security number, ignore it. It's a scam. Same thing with Social Security. If you receive anything from a government entity, it's going to be in writing, not by phone. There are also all these scams that I've noticed lately where people are saying, if you fill out this information, you're going to get a $1,000 gift card to Kmart or Kroger's. I'd be careful. I believe most, if not all, of these are scams. And they lure you in. There are so many people lurking out there looking for ways to get your money. And what's interesting, Gracefully Greying, we partnered up with Wayne State University Department of Gerontology. It's headed by Dr. Peter Lichtenberg, who has been involved on the leading edge with regard to research on issues that impact upon those of us who are gracefully graying, including issues with regard to Alzheimer's dementia. He recently has done a survey, and they've also added a website to help people who are victims of these scams called olderadultnestegg.com. That's olderadultnestegg.com. And I also did an interview with Dr. Lichtenberg where we discussed the fact that they are now doing research that shows there's a direct correlation between cognitive impairment, and if you are cognitively impaired due to early stage Alzheimer's or dementia, or for some other reasons, perhaps because of a stroke, and it's a 10% amount of cognitive impairment, it results in a 20% result of loss of your net worth in many, many instances.
Wow.
So if you have an estate of $1 million, that means you're going to lose $200,000. 500,000 is 100,000. So those are the numbers, and they're running these surveys as we speak. So there are a lot of things that can be done. I have another example that I'll give you because the examples are endless, but this is another example. I have an uncle who passed away recently at the age of 97. When he was 96, about 3 years ago, he got a call saying that his nephew, Henry, was in jail for drunk driving. I got a call from another uncle, and that uncle lives in Boston, Massachusetts. Another uncle who is now 90 called me and said, your other uncle called them, and the two are brothers, saying that I'm in jail. Are you all right? And I said, I'm fine. It's a scam. And I called the uncle in Massachusetts and told him, it's a scam. Don't do anything. I'm fine. I have not been arrested. But these happen all of the time. So the advice is be careful. I mean, you want to trust your loved ones, your relatives. And sometimes your loved ones are going to take advantage of you. I've had numerous cases where siblings will fight over who's going to take care of mom or who's going to take care of dad. And sometimes one sibling will have his or her name on all the bank's accounts, will be running all the financial affairs, and lo and behold, that sibling has decided to take his or her inheritance in advance. So these are things you have to be careful of. And I guess what's important is, first of all, if you're dealing with these things, sit down with a trusted financial advisor. Make sure that you know what you're doing. Make sure that you're getting good advice. This is something that Renee and the other people at Telemus can help you with. But having someone who is trustworthy is important. Another area is having important talks with family members. It's like another interview I did dealt with the fact that as we get older, even though we're sharp in many respects, we're not as sharp and not as quick as we used to be. And these are things that have to be recognized. So there are many, many issues. And one thing I want to mention, that at Gracefully Greying, it's not all doom and gloom. Our goal is really, in our tagline, is living life fully. And with that, I'm sure there are other areas, but I just wanted to highlight some of the key issues, and I'll turn this back to Renee.
Speaking of living life fully, tell us about the importance of compiling information, retaining critical information, and how to share that information with your loved ones and how important that is.
Right. So we are developing a book called Listing Life Fully, which is basically a place for family members, probably the senior to a mom or a dad, a senior relative, to be able to document where everything is in their life, including everything from digital passwords to who their doctors are, to the contact, the location, where their legal documents are. Basically, you know, who mows their lawn? Do they have car leases? What is their banking situation? Basically a place for people to house all of this information and have it in a place where family members or a guardian conservator could go and know where all of this is, and just have peace of mind that they know where the information is. God forbid something happens, somebody's in the hospital, you need to access this information, and have it be a place where you just know where everything is. And it's something that could be done. It doesn't have to be done right away, and it doesn't have to be done all at once, but just setting priorities as to maybe what the most important information is that your family or loved one needs to know about you and your everything in your life. And then keep filling it in, keep prioritizing till you have kind of a complete document of your life and all the resources and contacts and friends and, you know, technology, everything that you have. So that's what we are developing right now. It will be available soon on Gracefully Greying, and I, you know, encourage people to either give it as gifts or just say, hey, you know, we really need to do this. Or it could be for organizations that want to brand it and give that out to employees or, you know, groups, whomever they feel is important to get this information out to. So that's something that's coming up with Gracefully Greying.
If you have that, we actually just had a question come up. How do you safely put that somewhere where you know that it's going to be kept confidential?
Well, it could go into a safe deposit box. I mean, that's one of the things, the pieces of information that's there. You know, where's your safe deposit box? It's at the bank. It's maybe you have a safe deposit at home. Maybe it's just kept in a certain place in the home where people know where it is. You know, could be the underwear drawer, could be the back of a closet, could be, you know, wherever you keep in a file cabinet at home. Or it could be kept digitally, which could be the way to go. You know, technologically, I mean, a decision would have to be made whether you want to actually write it out, fill it out, or do it electronically. That would be another option. So you would have to kind of discuss that together with your family member as to where it is, who knows where it is, and have everybody on the same track as far as that, the location of it, which is very important, obviously.
And then, you know, that kind of brings us, we had another question that actually leads into our next question. How do you think technology has helped or hindered the process of gracefully graying? Have you seen a change in how people care for their loved ones due to the advances of technology? There are so many things to be afraid of when it comes to, you know, cybersecurity and hackers and those sorts of things. So how do you think technology has benefited us or harmed us?
Right.
Process?
I mean, I think there are so many benefits to technology. I mean, look where we are right now, where families and friends are Zooming. You know, it's very difficult to meet. You know, you're not wanting to meet, you're not wanting to get close. So Zoom technology and FaceTime. It's so important for people to socialize and be together in that way. So in that sense, technology is an amazing thing. And, who knew a year ago that this is what we'd be doing right now, but people have embraced it. There is the challenge of educating seniors as to how to get on Zoom, how to use their technology, how to log into their smartphones, how to log into their iPads, computers, knowing what your passwords are. It's complicated, knowing steps of how to copy URLs and sending things to people, whether it's business-wise or socially. That's a challenge. That's another thing that we will be coming up with some educational seminars, how to teach seniors specifically how to use technology. There are so many facets to this. One of our sponsors is a telemed company, 5-Star Telemed. They're at the forefront of helping patients, caregivers, families, senior assisted living facilities have 24/7 telemed capabilities, which would allow people to be monitored in the middle of the night when maybe the staffs are a little more not quite there with the patient. And it's a way for doctors to keep tabs on patients and have family members know exactly what's going on, maybe during downtimes or on weekends. So they're not only doctors, but they are a software company as well. And that particular company, it's all in-house based. It's all, keeping up on the latest technology as far as what's available to seniors and their families. We're also, Henry and I and Gracefully Greying are involved with a new app that is launching called Genus Connect. Henry Ford Hospital has bought into it, as well as part of the U of M, University of Michigan health system. We are involved in it as far as providing content and resources to families to be able to find, whether it's a caregiver, whether it's a telemed company, whether it's an assisted living, whether it's just reading content on their platform, which we provide as far as, could involve anything, whether it's entertainment, business news, whatever's going on currently. So they're looking to us to help provide content on their platform. And then the other side of their app is they're going into a lot of assisted living facilities throughout the country and offering this as a service to their patients. So it's a tie-in between families and caregivers and doctors and kind of a whole comprehensive collaborative app to be able to communicate with each other. And so in that sense, technology, it's amazing what's going on. I'm continuously doing research for people to interview and innovations that we can feature on Gracefully Greying. And I think it was last week I came across a company that is actually developing an avatar for seniors. People who may be lonely in a facility or in their house, actually, and they can interact with an avatar that they name. And it's not a ton of interaction. It's not hours, but it's enough to keep people occupied, a little interaction, social interaction, because that's very important now. So when you talk about the whole technology, I think it's amazing what's out there. And, that's one of the goals of Gracefully Greying, is to bring this technology knowledge to people and products and medical products and all kinds of resources. So that's what we hope to keep doing and keep researching.
That's great. Those are all so exciting. With how often computers get compromised, someone is asking, do you feel that it's safe to even keep the listing life fully information on the computer, or how would you recommend that someone store that so they can ensure that it's secure?
Well, they need a login and a password to be able to log into the downloadable PDF form. But they could save it on the cloud and then it's secure.
Like something like Dropbox or something like
Correct. Correct. And, we could help them with that. I mean, there are ways of, storing your documents that are secure on your computer and in the cloud.
that. Why should you begin to plan for aging sooner rather than later, especially in today's day and age?
It's a good question. And again, I'm the eldest person in the room right now, where we never know what tomorrow is going to bring. It's like, I've noticed situations where people in their 30s and 40s have had a major stroke. I've noticed situations where people have had a tragic auto accident and perhaps have been paralyzed or killed or suffered severe brain damage. And then as you get older, it's like, I have a dear friend who was a friend of mine going back to high school, and he passed away in March, just as the COVID-19 pandemic was taking hold and after things had shut down. And one of his statements that always sticks in my mind is that life is like a minefield. Something's going to get you. It may not kill you, it may cripple you, but we don't know where, we don't know when. Hopefully we live a long, full, happy life. But things happen. And because things happen, it's important the old saying is, plan for the worst, but hope for the best. Have insurance. Make sure you have adequate savings for a rainy day. I mean, for many, many people, forget about health issues. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the middle of a crisis where the economy, which had been very strong, but jobs are lost. Whole parts of the economy, take entertainment, take restaurants, they've been crippled. A lot of restaurants here in the Detroit area I know are not going to reopen. Or if they do, it'll be on such a limited basis that it's a changed life, it's a changed environment. And so for these reasons, it's important to take stock. It's important to look at your finances. It's important to say, do you have enough insurance? Are your assets protected? Can you afford to pay your mortgage and other expenses for several months if all of a sudden you're out of work? So these are important things, and if anything, COVID-19 has brought this to the forefront more than anything. I mean, a lot of us have been coasting along for many, many years with the idea that things are always going to get better, things are good, and look what happened. It's like everything is hit at once. Our society is in turmoil, our political system is in turmoil, our financial system is in turmoil, and people want to wish that COVID-19 is going to go away, but thankfully in Michigan we have some of the most stringent restrictions, and for these reasons we're ahead of the curve, and things are so much worse in places like Florida, Arizona, Texas, by way of example. So if anything, what's going on now is all the more reason why you should take stock, you should talk to your loved ones, and you should plan and make sure that your affairs are in order.
Now, a lot of people don't want to have these conversations or think that, their loved ones are going to be offended if they're asking them questions as far as the state of their financial affairs or certain personal information that they typically wouldn't share. Have you found a good way? I know, of course, it depends on the personalities of the people you're dealing with, but what's the best way of approaching that subject with your loved ones for someone that might be more private and doesn't really want to communicate those issues?
That's a tough question. And what's interesting, one of my early shows was with a woman who was a lawyer. She'd recently retired. Her parents, they're still alive, but they were in their early 90s. Her father was a dentist who had retired. They actually had 3 homes, one on a lake here in Oakland County and 2 in Turks and Caicos in the Caribbean. Her other siblings were out of state, so she was the one running everything. So she had to sit down with her parents. She had to help make decisions like, Dad, it's time to stop driving. Maybe it's time to sell one or both of the properties. The house that I grew up in is too large. And it's important to have these conversations. And I think as we age, certain things are taboo. It's like money is always a taboo. I mean, talking about sex is usually a taboo, but especially money. And I think we've got to sit down and tell our children, you know, these are where important papers are. And that's why the listing that Laurie discussed that Gracefully Greying is involved in is so important. Because it's important for children to know where things are if something happens. I think it's important sometimes to sit down and say, you know, we're getting older. If something happens, what do you want done? Do you have any wishes with regard to a funeral? With regard to whether or not you want to just let nature take its course, or you want to have someone use everything medically possible to keep you alive? And everyone has a different view. Different religions have different views. And I think these are things that have to be discussed. They can be difficult, and sometimes it's a matter you have to say to your children, I think you should be involved in this aspect of our lives, and perhaps you should be involved in other aspects, because you're dealing with sensitive issues and you're dealing with a lot of, there can be hurt feelings. So, and in many families, there's a lot of dysfunction, and these are conversations that may not go well. But
yeah, I would also add.
I'm sorry?
I would also add to that, Henry, that, you know, there are so many professionals that can help, whether it's financial advisors, whether it's attorneys, whether it's doctors, whether it's social care agencies or social workers or friends, or, you know, if possible, take advantage of, you know, you don't know everything. So take advantage of asking people, you know, finding resources, reaching out. You know, I just think that that is so helpful, and everything that you just discussed, Henry, that, you know, reach out into the community. And again, that's what we're trying to provide, are resources for people, no matter where you're located, and have people help you. And, you know, and I think it's kind of like, it's like cleaning out the closet. Like once you start, you feel so much better. And it's just easier for everybody. So
let me jump in again, because
yeah.
I think what you're saying is so important. And I think what we want to convey, Laurie, is the fact that Gracefully Greying, we're building, it's not just a site, but really a community. The goal is that this is a place or a resource for every possible issue and need that people who are gracefully graying and getting older or have aging parents can go to find answers, to find resources, to find people who they can hire to help. I mean, things like downsizing, things like moving, things like getting rid of stuff, things like having the right financial planner. These are all part of what we're building. Another thing that we're doing, and I think is important, we're looking at culture, we're looking at music, we're looking at the fact we've just are doing things with Annabelle Cohen, who's a local food expert. And we did an interview with her, and she's going to be doing a lot of work with us in the future. So it's like there are so many issues. I mean, and I learn from every interview. I mean, to give a couple of examples, one of my first guests was Judge Linda Hallmark, who's was the chief judge in Oakland County Probate Court, is one of the principal judges in Oakland County Probate Court, which handles estates of decedents, which handles mental health and all the areas that impact upon gracefully growing. And she said, well, I'm not gracefully growing, I dye my hair. Another anecdote, I interviewed a cosmetologist who has a major store in Birmingham called Antonino's. And he told me, you remember all those little old ladies with blue hair? And I said, do you see them much anymore? And I thought about it and I said, no. Do you know why they had blue hair? From smoking. Smoking actually colored their hair blue, those who were heavy smokers. Well, fewer and fewer people smoke, so people who are gracefully graying, and especially during the COVID-19 are letting their hair grow out gray, it's gray. It's not blue. And it's because of smoking. So everyone has a story to tell, and that's something we want to share, and we want people to tell their stories because every life is important, and that's something we're focusing on as well.
So in adding to that, if you go on our website, you'll see a red button that says share your story. We would love people to literally share their stories, and it would be submitted to us and we'll go over it. And, you know, I think people do want to, it's a time to develop community and to hear what other people are experiencing, no matter what it is. So we are providing that avenue to share your story, and we'd love to hear from everybody.
Oh, that's great. Let's talk about, what do you think gracefully graying means in the age of COVID-19 as far as, you know, gathering with friends, doctor visits, socialization while in isolation? How do you think you're seeing people best deal with that, and what kind of things are they doing to combat that loneliness or get that interaction with people?
Let me jump in first. Renee, I think our goal is to provide a safe haven, a harbor in a storm, because there's a storm going around impacting upon all our lives. You know, ideally, we should be able to meet with friends and family. It's like people want to hold and hug their grandchildren. They want to hold and hug their grandparents and parents. We've lost that. Unless you're very, very careful, those things don't exist. So what's happening now through video, we have friends who we get together with. We'll set a certain time and we'll have a video gathering. And we recently had a situation where our nephew just had a baby. He lives in San Jose, California. So they had a virtual baby naming with people participating, family members. There were probably 50, 60 or more family members and friends on Zoom, and we're all participating. And it was a beautiful thing. So it's like when we were building this, when we launched it, we launched it in the middle of a pandemic. But when we were building this, we had no idea that there would be such a need for the technology, for the Zoom, for the ability to find everything on computer. But it's there. This is an answer, because one thing I learned when we were building last fall in the elder community and people who provide services for those who are gracefully graying. You talk about financial planners, you talk about elder law attorneys, you talk about people with regard to assisted living facilities, you talk about people with regard to medical facilities, you talk about, it's endless. People who do catering, who do driving for people, who have special phones, who do medical supplies. We can go on and on and on. There are hundreds of areas out there aimed at the demographics, which are 50 and over or with aging parents. They would have trade shows. They would have lectures and they would have trade shows. Or in the financial community, especially typical, you'd have a get together at a restaurant, you'd provide dinner, and you'd talk about the important funds or ways that like Telemus can help you, can do a better job managing your money than perhaps someone else. That's gone now. So everything has to be done digitally, has to be done through webinars such as what we're doing, or through the ability to access the videos that we're doing on Gracefully Greying, as well as the content that we're providing on Gracefully Greying, where we welcome additions every day, and we're growing every day, and we're unique because there's no one out there that provides all the goods and services and the access to these goods and services and information from every aspect of our lives. Laurie, please add to that.
Well, that was well said. You know, I just also want to add that it's not just local and it's not just Southeast Michigan or Michigan based, but you know, Henry and I are talking to people all over the country. We've been talking, in fact, Henry did an interview with Ben Combs and his business partner who are developing in Portland, Oregon, the Advisory Cooperative, which will be a brick and mortar, but unfortunately that's not happening right now. But they're also developing an app, a financial app, but more of a co-op to get people together. It's kind of an interesting concept, but you know, we are talking to people all over the country. So it's you know, and a lot of the information that we provide and the resources, it doesn't matter where you are. It's helpful and beneficial to any geographic location. Yeah, just check out what we have and share it on social media. I mean, that's another thing. You know, seniors sharing on social media and sharing it with your friends and knowing how to do that. You know, that's important nowadays as far as gaining information, and, you know, hopefully we can help people do that as well.
And speaking of the gatherings, you know, we were talking about when you mentioned the dinners or the meetings or events people will have, there's plenty, you know, Telemus has been doing many virtual gatherings, from like wine and cheese tastings or trivia nights, or, you know, I've seen lots of virtual bingo around. So making sure that your loved ones are participating in those things, or maybe organizing that for them, is a great way to kind of keep them socializing with family and friends.
For sure.
And with the baby naming, with that Zoom, you know, they probably never would have had that attendance if they actually had it in real life. So in some ways, it actually ends up being better than it would have been had it been live.
Let me put in a plug. I have a book that I co-wrote with Dr. Jack Haynes, who's a forensic psychologist, looking at every issue of child custody from legal and psychological perspectives. It's called Child Custody, A Complete Guide for Parents. It's also aimed at grandparents, because we talk about grandparent rights and issues, which are something, sadly, in Michigan, nationally, grandparents do not have a lot of legal rights with regard to their grandchildren. And I think one bit of advice that I would pass on to anyone who is a grandparent is, the key is, be good to your children, because they're the key to your grandchildren. And, you know, there's no such thing as too little love. And there's an old saying that it takes a village to raise a family, or to raise a child, I should say. And I think that's even more true today, especially as we are distanced because of the COVID-19.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Laurie, did you have anything else you wanted to interject? I'll see if any questions come in the meantime, but I think that covered what I had to cover.
Yeah, I mean, I think we really kind of covered, you know, check out our YouTube channel. We have so many interviews that Henry has done with so many professionals giving great advice, you know, everything from legal to medical to, you know, psychological. One of our sponsors is Rochester Center for Behavioral Medicine, Dr. Joel Young. I mean, a great resource. You know, just really check out all of our resources and sponsors, and you know, join our platform. You know, we're always looking for more professionals, professional advice, and again, stories from people all over.
One thing I'd like to add, I recently did an interview with the Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court, Justice Bridget McCormick. And the Supreme Court of the state of Michigan had the prescience in 2019 to order Zoom video subscriptions for every courtroom in the state of Michigan. Little did we know that we'd be operating, because of COVID-19, under a Zoom system. So
Right.
now the courts are operating under Zoom. Everything is Zoom, everything is digital, and it works well in many areas, but in the areas of jury trials, not so well. And these are things I could talk about for about an hour based upon the interview and the knowledge I've gained from talking to judges and referees about what's going on in the legal system. But again, if any of you have to deal with the legal system, especially with regard to the probate courts and mental health issues, this is basically being done by Zoom.
So interesting. Who would have thought, right?
We're living in very surreal times, to say the
That we
least.
are. That we are. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Henry and Laurie. I really appreciate it. A recording of the webinar will be available shortly. Feel free to forward it on to anyone you feel might benefit from what we just spoke about. And if you have any questions about our family services or Gracefully Greying, please don't hesitate to contact me or your financial advisor.